please welcome your moderator for this morning's session, Edward Lucas.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for making an almost prompt start to our presidential debate this morning. I think that if you don't know who President Andrej Kiska is, you're certainly at the wrong conference and taking up a valuable seat that should go to someone better informed. So I'm not even going to begin to try and introduce President Kiska. I'm just going to welcome him very warmly to GLOBSEC, and we look forward very much to his remarks. President Kiska.
Good morning. Good morning. I hope that you had a great night. Bratislava is a lot of things to not only to see, but also a lot of things which you can do. So once again, good morning, presidents, prime ministers, ambassadors, dear friends. First, let me congratulate everyone who contributed to this amazing event. Rising from zero, from scratch, to a world-class conference with its own distinct brand and 10 years of continuous success. I think that GLOBSEC really deserves its international recognition. I am proud to be here today and to have this opportunity to welcome you all in my country and also on behalf of Slovak people. Last year, I was here as president-elect, only a few weeks after the Russian annexion of Crimea. An act of aggression which has shaken the security architecture in Europe. It ended the era of optimism that we will not see European borders changed by military force in the 21st century, or at least not so close to our own comfort zone. And the war in Ukraine, our neighboring country, has proven us wrong. In my first day in my office, I was shown a nuclear shelter in my palace. And I consider it to be more curiosity, relic from shadowy past of Cold War era. Couple months later, I heard Russian president talking about nuclear arsenal aimed at the West. A year ago, some may have wanted to believe Ukraine was an isolated episode that will somehow go away. Today, there is no doubt it was not an episode. It is something far more complex and far more dangerous. It is a new reality. New trend that undermines stability and prosperity in Europe, attacks sovereignty and challenges our values. Instead of dialogue and cooperation, we face revisionism aimed at eroding our way of life. Illegal annexion of Crimea, ongoing war in Ukraine, continuing occupation of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, but also heavy disinformation campaign aimed at our countries ended our vision of strategic partnership with President Putin's Russia, at least for an expectable future. There is no point to pretend otherwise, where one of so-called partner is breaking international laws, reviving Cold War rhetoric, revisiting history, and openly spreading hateful propaganda aimed at our society. We have neither wished for it and we not have caused it. It is here and we have only one choice: to adapt. It will require new strategies, plans, resources, and actions. But most of all, we have to overcome our own weakness, our indifference, inconsistency, and indecisiveness. It's crucial to stay united on the question of sanctions until Minsk agreements are fully implemented. It is important to use every opportunity in search for a diplomatic solution aimed to stop the killing of innocent people. At the same time, we need to invest into our own defense to protect the eastern border of the EU and NATO, and to have enough political courage to explain the need for it to our citizens. These important topics and consequences of the war in Ukraine are richly and deeply covered during your discussion here at GLOBSEC. So let me underline only two more points which I consider urgent, where our indifference, inconsistency, and indecisiveness can have far-reaching consequences. Firstly, let's get rid of the illusion that our security ends within our borders. If our neighbors are in trouble, we are all at risk. If we don't help our partners, if we leave them in a vacuum of unclear promises and half-hearted efforts, the threats may come to our borders. Let us all remember, the people of Ukraine are fighting for their freedom and sovereignty today because of their recent decision to become a part of our democratic Europe. I am convinced that the European perspective for Ukraine is as important for the safety and prosperity of the Ukrainian people as it is for us in the West. And by European perspective, I mean a clear vision, shape of our mutual cooperation, usable roadmap for the European Union membership. Not a polite diplomatic way how to avoid talking about the membership openly at all. In my country, we know how important this vision is. We still remember how frustrating it was to be left behind when our neighbors advanced towards the EU and NATO. And we remember how difficult it was to come back on the track, to carry out unpopular reforms, to decrease living standard temporarily, but also to give people hope, to revive the vision. I don't want to imagine where Slovakia would have been without this vision. Providing a better life for the people is the best answer to any aggressive intentions. If people have something to lose, they will defend it. It is the prosperity, stability, and freedom for the people what authoritarian regimes fear the most. Example that their own people would like to follow. Secondly, I have talked about the world beyond our borders, but let's not forget about our own societies. Extremism and nationalism have grown stronger in the recent years, and so has mistrust in governments. These trends can be as dangerous to our security as any outside threat. These trends can be very, very dangerous. The disinformation campaign uses these trends. It supports cynicism by telling us lies about Ukraine, about EU policy, and about the NATO. It has only one goal: to destroy the unity of the EU. It aims to paralyze decision-making by importing confusion. We should confront lies with the facts directly and openly. We have to show what we can lose if we follow such dangerous ideas. We need to go even deeper, to work with our young generation, to teach them critical thinking, to remind them of our history, roots of our society and its success. If we want to preserve our ability to make independent and responsible decisions, we need to get our own affairs in order. Inclination toward extremism and pressure of propaganda have something in common. They both gain momentum when people are frustrated by our own inability to deliver. That's why it is so important to focus even more on economic growth, to provide more opportunities for young people, and to take good care of public finances. Ladies and gentlemen, impact of indifference, inconsistency, and indecisiveness is clearly present in the crisis we are facing at the southern borders of the EU. More and more, we witness how instability spreads from post-conflict regions. The current wave of refugees from North Africa and Middle East demonstrates it. What once was a regional crisis has become a European problem and international responsibility. Europe is in desperate search for the principles and the rules how to face the immigration wave, how to help refugees, and at the same time, how to preserve our own security, how to stay devoted to our principles of humanism, how to deal with it economically, socially, and culturally, what we can handle and what may go over our limits. Every member state has its own hill to climb here, and Slovakia is no exception. We are not a country of entry of this massive wave of immigrants, and in fact, we have more or less zero experience with refugees. And yet, there are too many strong words and categorical statements in our domestic public discussion. It would be useful to calm down and let us all remember we are talking about human beings, women, children, and men, not running away from poverty, but from cruelty and murdering. We are not only able to help refugees, but we have moral obligation to do so. There are no easy solutions. The reallocations of refugees across the member states or some sort of similar decisions may cure the symptoms for a while, but it will not address the causes and can't handle the wave of economic immigrants. At the same time, it would be unfair to leave the solution to the most exposed states. And the same goes for the international community. It is a European problem today, but will become a global one tomorrow if we do not cooperate. All UN Security Council members must show responsibility. In the meantime, the most difficult part of our job is work with public opinion. Because if we do not explain why it is important to help those in need, we will leave room for extremists to make their political case. As I mentioned this week elsewhere, uncertain times we are living now are the test of the limits of our pragmatism. They are a challenge to our cohesion and principles of the European Union is built on. But most of all, in many countries, including my own country, it is a battle for hearts, minds, and trust of people. Ladies and gentlemen, the future will depend on our ability to adapt to a new reality, not to long for good old times. This will require bold new decisions, none of which will be popular or comfortable, but which are urgently needed. We must prepare for years of instability, but we need to protect our citizens. Our way of life remains the best answer to aggressive dogmas. So it is not surprise it will continue to be target for those who fear our way of life. It is imperative for us to demonstrate that our foundations are stronger than propaganda, stronger than actions aimed at destroying the pillars of our peace projects after the horrible events of World War II. We have to keep this in mind when we are dealing with our own challenges in the European Union. For example, Greek debt crisis or negotiation over the EU reforms. We should try to make sure they will not lead to the slow erosion and weakening of our European project. The stakes are too high. I am convinced we can succeed in our efforts. Our society can resist these challenges, and it is the best place for people seeking peace, freedom, and prosperity. They will be ready protected because it will be worth it. But we will be able to do so only if we do not accept the game of undermining our values. If we do not let ourselves to be trapped in our own indifference, inconsistency, and indecisiveness. Thank you for your attention.
President Kiska, thank you so much for such an inspirational kick-off to the day. It's very fashionable for people to bemoan the lack of leadership in Europe, and I'm always very skeptical of this, because being old enough to remember some previous generations of leaders, I'm not sure that they were as particularly popular at the time either. But I think what you've shown is that it's possible from a Slovak point of view to have really important thoughts, not just about the very difficult foreign policy position we're in, but also these very important domestic questions. And remembering the refugees who left Czechoslovakia after '68 and the welcome that they got, I think it's particularly good to have a Slovak leader now highlighting the moral dimension that I think particularly for Central European countries that don't have a reputation or a tradition of accepting migrants, but do have a history of having had to be migrants in the toughest possible circumstances. So thank you very much for that. And now it's my great pleasure to move on to two more presidents. We actually will have three presidents for a bit, because President Kiska is going to be able to stay for a bit and hear the opening remarks from our other two presidents, and then he has to leave. But I do want to say one final point. Please take that message to London and educate the British leaders on all those points you made, because I know you're coming to London next week.